Commander Elias Ward sat quietly on the bridge of the Aegis Dawn. The ship was large and filled with advanced technology, shining with clean metal and glowing lights. Elias was a human, part of Earth's Space Alliance, a group trying to keep peace in the galaxy. But today, peace felt fragile. The stars outside the window moved slowly as the ship drifted toward the Zarn Dominion's capital. The Zarn were a powerful alien race who ruled many systems with an iron fist. Humans were new to this big universe. Many aliens looked down on humans as weak or reckless. But Elias knew humans had something special: hope and heart. The door behind him opened softly. Captain Rhea, his second-in-command, stepped in. "Commander, the Zarn emissaries are ready for the ceremony," she said quietly. Elias nodded. "Very well, let's get this over with." The ceremony was a strange tradition. To show friendship, pour power, the Zarn often gave gifts to visiting leaders. Gifts that were never really gifts. Sometimes weapons, rare metals, or even living things. Today, Elias was to receive a gift. He did not like the idea. When they entered the grand hall on the Zarn capital ship, Elias felt the weight of many eyes. The room was vast, filled with tall, sharp-looking Zarn nobles who watched with cold interest. At the center stood Lord Vrax, the Zarn leader. He was tall, with dark scales and sharp eyes that seemed to look through people. "You have served your people well," Lord Vrax said in a low voice. "As a token of our respect, we give you this," he motioned, and two guards brought forward a small cage. Inside was a young alien girl. She was small and pale, with large, dark eyes that looked tired and scared. Her skin was almost translucent, shining faintly blue under the hall's lights. Her long hair fell in messy waves around her thin shoulders. Elias felt his heart tighten. He knew what this meant. This girl was a Miari, a race long enslaved by the Zarn. They were bred to be servants, workers, and nothing more. The crowd waited silently for Elias to react. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I do not accept this gift," he said firmly. "No living being is property." The room went silent. Lord Vrax's eyes narrowed. "You misunderstand, human. This is honor. The girl is yours to command." Elias looked at the girl. She flinched but did not cry. Her name, he would learn later, was Lyra. "No," Elias said again. "I will not treat her as a servant. She is a person. I will treat her with respect." Lord Vrax's lips curled into a sneer. "We shall see." Elias turned and left the hall, Lyra following quietly behind the guards. Back on the Aegis Dawn, Elias gave Lyra a room of her own. It was small but clean, with a window looking out into space. He brought her food, fresh fruits and water, and sat with her quietly. "Why are you afraid?" Elias asked softly. Lyra looked up with wide eyes. "I have been told. I must obey. If I do not, there is punishment." Elias nodded slowly. "That is wrong. No one should live in fear like that." For the first time, Lyra smiled faintly. Days passed. Elias taught Lyra simple things: how to read, basic human customs, music, even stories of Earth. She was quick to learn. She also showed him her knowledge, strange symbols and machines from her world that she understood better than any human. On the ship, slowly, trust grew between them. The crew whispered among themselves. Some were confused. "Why does the commander favor a slave girl?" they asked. Others quietly admired Elias's kindness. Elias ignored the gossip. He saw in Lyra a chance not just for friendship, but for change. One evening, Elias sat in his quarters studying reports from the Zarn. Lyra came in quietly, holding a small device. "I found something," she said, her voice low. Elias took the device and looked at the screen. It showed coded messages, secret plans for an attack on Miari colonies. "They want to destroy anyone who disobeys," Elias said grimly, "including you." Lyra's eyes widened. Fear returned, but now it mixed with determination. "We must warn them," Elias said. "We cannot let this happen." Lyra nodded. But how? The Tsar watched us closely. Elias stood, his mind racing. We will find a way. The ship's quiet hum filled the room, but Elias felt a storm rising inside. The galaxy was about to change, and so were they. That night, Elias looked out at the stars. The little Miari girl was no longer just a gift or a servant. She was a spark, a symbol of hope in a universe ruled by fear. He whispered, "I will protect you, Lyra, no matter what." And for the first time in a long time, Elias felt something strong and true. Days passed aboard the Aegis Dawn, and life slowly changed for both Elias and Lyra. The small Miari girl who once trembled in fear was now learning to smile and trust. Elias watched her closely, feeling a strange warmth growing in his heart. He was not used to caring for anyone like this, especially not someone others called a slave. Lyra's curiosity grew each day. She asked many questions about Earth, about humans, about freedom. Elias answered patiently. He told her stories of Earth's blue skies, green forests, and oceans full of life. He spoke of how humans had struggled and fought for their rights, how they learned to stand up for themselves and others. One afternoon, Elias brought a small music player to Lyra's room. Soft sounds filled the air, gentle melodies that Lyra had never heard before. She closed her eyes and let the music wash over her. The first time she felt something close to happiness. "Is this your music?" she asked softly. "Yes," Elias said with a smile. "Music helps us remember who we are." Lyra nodded, her eyes shining. "I want to learn more." Meanwhile, tensions on the ship grew. Some crew members whispered behind Elias's back. Captain Rio warned him quietly one day, "Sir, not everyone agrees with how you treat Lyra. Some say you're wasting time on a servant when we have more important work." Elias shook his head. "She is not a servant. She is a person, a friend." Ria sighed, but said nothing more. The whispers did not stop. Some officers saw Lyra as a symbol of weakness, a distraction that could endanger the mission. Others saw hope, proof that humans could be better. One evening, Elias found Lyra in the ship's engineering bay. She was studying a panel of complex controls, her fingers tracing lines of light. "You understand this better than anyone else?" Elias said, impressed. Lyra looked up. "I grew up with machines like this. They are from Miari homeworlds. The Tsar changed many things, but I still remember." Elias sat beside her. "Can you help me understand their systems? Maybe we can find a way to protect your people." Lyra nodded eagerly. Together, they worked late into the night, decoding messages and analyzing the ship's security. Lyra's knowledge was deep, beyond what Elias expected. At the same time, Lyra's own feelings began to change. She saw Elias not just as a commander, but as a protector and teacher. She admired his courage and kindness. For the first time, she dreamed of a life without fear, a life where she could choose her own path. One day, as they walked through the ship's corridors, Lyra asked quietly, "Why do you care for me? You could have ignored me like the others." Elias looked at her with gentle eyes. "Because I know what it means to be treated unfairly, to be judged by what others say, instead of who you are." Lyra smiled softly. "You make me feel like I am important, like I am a princess." Elias chuckled. "Maybe you are." The peace was fragile. One morning, alarms sounded through the ship. The Tsarn fleet was moving faster than expected. They were preparing for war. Elias and Lyra hurried to the command center. Data screens showed Tsarn ships gathering near Miari colonies. "They are coming for them," Elias said grimly. "And soon, for Earth." Lyra's eyes widened. "We must warn the colonies." Elias nodded. "We will. But we need to move carefully. If the Tsarn find out what we know, it will be dangerous." Together, they worked on a plan to send secret messages to the Miari rebels scattered across the galaxy. Lyra used her skills to encrypt the warnings so the Tsarn could not decode them as they worked. Elias saw determination in Lyra's eyes, a fire he never expected. Days later, Elias called a meeting with his trusted officers. "The Tsarn planned to attack the Miari," he said. "We cannot let this happen. We must prepare for resistance. Some officers were doubtful. We have orders to stay neutral, one said. We cannot start a war. Elias stood firm. Neutrality means allowing injustice to continue. I will not be part of that. Captain Rhea nodded beside him. I stand with Elias. More crew members joined them, quietly pledging their support. As the Aegis Dawn approached the edge of the Zarn Dominion, Elias and Lyra felt the weight of the coming storm. The bond between them had grown stronger, not just as commander and servant, but as equals. Lyra's voice had changed from timid to confident. She was learning what it meant to be free. One night, Elias found her staring out at the stars. "Do you think we can win?" she asked. Elias smiled gently. "You have to try, because sometimes hope is the greatest weapon of all." The days ahead would test them both, but Elias knew one thing clearly. The girl given to him as a servant was no longer a prisoner. She was a princess in her own right, and together they would change the fate of their galaxy. The Aegis Dawn hummed quietly as it moved through the empty space near the border of the Zarn Dominion. Commander Elias Ward sat at the command console, eyes fixed on the data streaming across the screen. Lyra stood beside him, her dark eyes scanning encrypted messages she had just decoded. "What have you found?" Elias asked softly. Lyra's fingers danced across the controls, unlocking layers of secret files. "The Zarn have plans," she said, voice steady but tense. "They will attack the Miari colonies soon. They want to destroy any who resist." Elias clenched his fists. "They will come for Earth next. We must warn our leaders." Lyra nodded. "They cannot know we have this information. If they find out, we will be hunted." Elias looked at her, determination hardening his face. "Then we must act quickly. But first, we must protect you." In the weeks before, Elias and Lyra had grown closer than anyone on the ship could imagine. Odd. The crew whispered about the strange pair, the human commander and the Miari girl he refused to treat as anything less than a princess. But no one dared challenge Elias openly. One evening, in the quiet of the captain's quarters, Delia shared his fears with Lyra. "If the Zarn learn you helped me, they will come for you. They see your kind as property, nothing more." Lyra's eyes flashed with fire. "Then they will learn they are wrong." Her courage surprised Elias, but he knew the risk was real. The Zarn would stop at nothing. Elias made a decision. He would leave the Aegis Dawn with Lyra and flee to the Miari refugee colonies hidden deep in the galaxy. There they could warn the rebels and plan a defense. He gathered a small team of loyal officers who believed in the cause. Captain Rhea was among them. "We stand with you, Elias," she said firmly. "We will fight for what is right." Together, they prepared a secret escape. They loaded supplies, weapons, and encrypted data onto a smaller ship, the Falcon's Wing. It was fast and stealthy, perfect for slipping through enemy lines. The night of their escape was tense. The Aegis Dawn's security teams were on high alert. Elias and Lyra moved silently through the corridors, their hearts pounding as they boarded the Falcon's Wing. Lyra looked back at the ship that had been her prison and sanctuary. "Will we ever return?" she whispered. Elias smiled softly. "We will return, but as free people." With a roar, the Falcon's Wing launched into space. Slipping past Zarn patrols and disappearing into the stars, the journey was long and dangerous. Elias and his crew navigated through asteroid fields, past Zarn outposts, and through dark Neb. Lyra worked tirelessly, using her knowledge to break Zarn tracking signals and protect their path. One day, as they neared the Miari colonies, a transmission came through. "Lyra," the voice was crackling but familiar. "We heard your message. The rebellion is ready. We need you." Lyra smiled, feeling hope for the first time in years. "Tell them, I am coming." But the Zarn were not far behind. Their ships scoured the space lanes, searching for the traitors. Suddenly, alarms blared aboard the Falcon's Wing. Zarn fighters appeared on the sensors, closing fast. "Prepare for battle," Elias shouted. The small ship rocked as energy blasts hit its shields. The crew worked quickly, firing back with every weapon they had. Lyra manned the navigation controls. Weaving through the stars with skill and courage, Elias took the weapons. Console, targeting enemy fighters one by one. Despite being outnumbered, Falcon's wing held strong. After a fierce fight, the Zarn fighters retreated. Elias breathed heavily. We bought ourselves time. Lyra looked at him with fierce pride. We will win. When they finally arrived at the Myari colonies, Elias saw a world very different from the polished halls of the Aegis Dawn. The colony was rough and worn, scarred by years of war and slavery. But the people were alive, strong, and ready to fight. Lyra stepped forward, no longer a frightened girl, but a leader. She addressed the gathered Myari rebels. They gave me as a servant, she said, voice clear and strong, but I will not be a slave.
Now we are free.
Future. The crowd erupted in cheers. Elias stood beside her, feeling the power of hope grow. But victory would not come easily. The Zarn were vast and ruthless. Elias and Lyra worked together to train the rebels. Humans shared their military tactics and technology. The Myari shared their knowledge of the Zarn and the local systems. A strange but powerful alliance formed. One night, as they planned their next move, Elias asked, "What do you want to do?" Lyra smiled. "We will fight. We will. Not run anymore." Elias nodded. "Then we will stand with you. As equals." The Myari colony was alive with quiet determination. Elias stood on a small hill overlooking the settlement. Around him men and women prepared weapons, repaired ships, and trained with fierce focus. The air was filled with the sounds of hope and resistance. Beside him stood Lyra. She no longer looked like the scared girl who had come aboard the Aegis Dawn. Her eyes burned with strength and pride. The Myari people had accepted her as their leader, a princess not given by others, but born from their fight for freedom. Elias watched her closely. He was proud, but also knew the battle ahead would be the hardest yet. The Zarn were massing their forces. Their armada of warships moved through the dark space toward the colony, planning to crush the rebellion before it could grow. Elias and Lyra gathered the rebel leaders in a small room filled with maps and data screens. "We cannot face them," Hedon Elias said firmly. "Their fleet is larger and more powerful." Lyra nodded. "We must use our speed and knowledge of the system. Hit them where it hurts, then disappear." Together they formed a plan. The rebels would use guerrilla tactics, fast attacks on supply lines, and surprise strikes on isolated ships. Elias smiled. "This is not just a fight for survival. It is a fight for dignity." Training began immediately. Elias and the human officers worked with Myari pilots, teaching them how to fly faster, fight smarter, and work as a team. Lyra moved through the training grounds, encouraging the young fighters. She shared stories of Earth's heroes and taught them to believe in their own power. One young pilot approached her shyly. "Will we really win?" Lyra looked into his hopeful eyes. "We must, because we fight for something bigger than ourselves." The first battle came quickly. The rebels detected a small Zarn supply convoy moving through the system. Elias led a squadron of swift fighters with Lyra in the command ship. Coordinating attacks, the fighters moved like shadows, striking the convoy with precision. Zarn ships exploded in bursts of fire and smoke, but the fight was dangerous. Several rebel ships were damaged. Elias barely avoided a direct hit. After the battle, the rebels retreated 2 hidden bases. Though small, the victory was important. Sent a message to the Zarn. The rebellion was alive and ready. As the war Continued, Elias and Lyra's bond grew stronger. One evening, under the glowing stars of an alien sky, Elias and Lyra sat together outside a small campfire. "You have changed everything," Elias said softly. Lyra smiled. "You showed me I could be more than what they said." Elias reached out, taking her hand gently. "We fight not just for survival, but for a future where no one is a servant."
No.
Lyra squeezed his hand. Together. But the Zarn would not give up easily. Their leader, Lord Vrax, grew angry and desperate. He sent spies and assassins to find Elias and Lyra. Secret attacks on rebel bases tested their strength and will. One night the camp was attacked. Explosions shook the ground. Rebels fought fiercely to defend their home. Elias was injured protecting Lyra, taking a blow meant for her. The attack was repelled, but the cost was clear. The war was getting closer and more dangerous. Lyra knelt beside Elias's bed in the small medical tent. "You saved my life," she whispered. Elias smiled weakly. "I will always protect you."
Why?
Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "We must win. For all who suffer." The rebels prepared for their final battle. Elias addressed the fighters. "Why, today, we stand not just for ourselves, but for every being who has been oppressed. This is our time." Lyra stepped forward, her voice strong and clear. "They gave me as a servant, but I will lead as a princess. You will be free." The fighters cheered, their spirits soaring. The day of battle came. The rebel fleet met the Zarn armada in the dark void of space. Ships moved fast, weapons firing light and death. Elias commanded the fleet, using every tactic they had learned. Lyra coordinated from the command ship, inspiring her people. The fight was fierce and brutal. Ships exploded, filling space with fire and smoke. Pilots fought with courage and sacrifice. In the heat of battle, Elias saw the Zarn flagship Lord Vrax's ship moving toward the rebel command. He took his fighter and charged, dodging heavy fire. Elias reached the flagship and launched a final strike. The ship exploded in a brilliant burst. Breaking the enemy's command, the Zarn fleet faltered, began to retreat. Victory was theirs. The rebellion had won the day. Lyra stood proud before her people. "We are free because we believed in ourselves. We are no longer servants. We are who we choose to be." Elias stood beside her, bruised but alive. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had shown its true strength. The stars above the rebel colony shone brighter than ever, as if celebrating the victory. The great battle had ended, and the Zarn fleet was retreating into the dark reaches of space. But the war was not yet over. Elias knew this truth well. Freedom was a beginning, not an end. The Miari people gathered around a large platform in the center of the colony. They were tired but hopeful, their faces filled with a mixture of relief and determination. They waited for the words that would shape their future. Lyra stood tall before them, dressed in a simple but elegant robe that marked her as their leader. The timid girl who had once been given as a servant had become a princess in every sense of the word, not because of title, but because of courage, wisdom, and heart. Elias stood quietly to her side, his uniform battered, but his spirit strong. He had fought beside her through every challenge, never once doubting that this moment would come. Lyra's voice rang clear across the crowd. "They gave me as a servant," she said slowly, "but I have learned that a servant is not born. A servant is made by fear, by cruelty, by those who seek to control. I refuse to be made a servant." The crowd cheered softly. "We are free, because we chose to be. We fought, we bled, and we stood together, not just as Miari, but as equals, as friends, as family." Elias looked at the faces around him, Miari and humans standing side by side. The hope of a new future was alive. After the speech, representatives from Earth Space Alliance arrived to meet the new Miari leadership. The galaxy had watched the rebellion with surprise and admiration. Elias met with the Earth ambassador. "This victory is not just for the Miari," Elias said. "It is for all who believe in justice and dignity." The ambassador nodded. "Humanity has proven itself again. You have reminded the galaxy that kindness and courage can change even the darkest places." In the weeks that followed, the new Miari government worked to rebuild their worlds. Laws were created to protect freedom and equality. Refugees returned to their homes. The memory of slavery remained, but it no longer defined them. Lyra often visited Elias in his quarters. They talked about the future, one where humans and Miari could live as allies, sharing knowledge and culture. One evening, as the twin moons rose, Lyra turned to Elias. "You gave me something no one else did. Not just freedom, but hope." Elias smiled. "You gave me something too, the chance to believe in a better galaxy." But peace was fragile. Some Zarn factions still resisted, plotting revenge. Elias and Lyra knew they must remain vigilant. Together, they formed a new council, a united force of humans, Miari,
Ow.
and other freed peoples, to protect their hard-won freedom. Elias became a commander once more, not of a single ship, but of a fleet dedicated to justice. One quiet morning, Elias stood on a balcony, watching the stars. Lyra joined him, her hand finding his. "We have come far," she said softly. Elias nodded. "And there is still much to do," Lyra smiled. "But we will face it together." They stood side by side, looking toward the future, a future born from hope, courage, and the belief that no one should ever be a servant again. In the end, it was not weapons or power that changed the galaxy. It was a human's kindness, a Miari's courage, and the promise that every life is worth more than chains.